All right. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. It's good to have you with me today. I am so glad that you're here talking about the webinar of self-love or learning how to manage the way that we think about ourselves. It's pretty fascinating to me about how so many of us don't really know what self-love is all about. Anyway, first of all, I want to welcome you. I'm so glad that you're here. I am thankful that you've taken the opportunity to spend time with me thinking about the things that I've learned. And I got a question for you. Why are you here? So why are you here? You know, it could be about life. It could be while you're here in the room with me or on this webinar. I want to know, why are you here or why you showed up? I believe that all of us want more out of life. I believe that there's something that we want more out of life, and things in our world usually don't work out exactly the way that we want them to, and so we want more out of life. You have a chat box there. If you want to talk with me, that would be fine. I will try to keep up with those. And thinking about that part of how we want more out of life, the idea of wanting more out of life often is because things aren't happening the way that we want them to. And that's true about all of us, right? That's the way my life has been. Things in the past haven't shown up the way that I wanted them to, and I wanted more out of life. I know that's not that much different for any of us, because what we'd like to do is to summon the best person that we are forward so that we can become our best self. And don't we all want to be our best self? Every single day, I want, and I know you want to be your best self. But sometimes that's also impossible because of the things that are going on in our world. You know, all of us have to work past our old circumstances. You know, we have to get past the circumstances that are happening in our world. And it's just true, we do. So why did you show up? Are there circumstances that are difficult? Are things not going well for you? We all have this uphill climb. You know, I heard this story a while back, and I really think it's so true. Sometimes life is about pushing this ball up this hill, and every once in a while you find a rock to rest it against, but you're always back up pushing this rock up this hill, and that is no fun at all when we're doing that, because we're not actually living life. We're not really happy, and we don't have the things that we want in our life when we are doing that. And so hopefully in the time today that we're going to get together, I'm going to share with you some things that truly made an impact on my life, and how I learned how to stop kind of push that ball up the hill, keeping life ahead of me, and actually changed some of the ways that I think about myself. We're talking about self-love and how that actually happened for me. Now, this may or may not work for you. It worked for me. And we're going to be talking about how that can actually, you can do some things. I'm going to give you an assignment later on that you can do some things that can help you move toward that person. So let's think a little bit about the circumstances that you're in. Now, I don't know you personally. If you're just showing up, please say hello to us. There's a chat box there. I'm going to try to watch that as much as I can to make sure that you all are, that I'm following. If you have questions for me, ask them there. Now, here's the fun part about thinking about self-love. Most of us have an idea of what that is, that it isn't really. I'm going to get to that in just a moment. But one of the things that we really want out of life is sometimes realizing who we really are. Life is really short, and I wonder, what is the magic that you bring to life? What is it that you bring to life that's magical? The way that I think about magic in life is that I have this energy on the inside of me to be the person that I want to be, to live life fully in who I am. And that's the magic of life, learning to live life on purpose and learning to focus on living a life that I'm consciously aware of who I am, and I'm also self-aware of what's happening around me. When we aren't self-aware, when we aren't consciously living, what happens is we just exist. I know maybe you haven't heard of Ed Mylett, but I heard him speak over the weekend. Actually, this last week I was at some training, and he was talking about how he's a multimillionaire. He bought his own island. He made $500 million in his coaching practice. He's a life coach like I am doing, and he's very, very well accomplished at what he's doing. And he realized how short life was starting about 2 years ago. He started having some health issues, and his heart giving him some difficulties, and he began to do some introspection, and he recognized that he was just doing the deal. He was just showing up, just working hard, the next thing. buy an island, meet this person and make that much money and own that car, or meet that person, or whatever those goals were that he had in his world. He was always heading toward this next goal. There's always more and more and more. And then he started having health issues in his 50s, and as I mentioned, his heart was giving him some difficulties, and it's been a 2-year process, but he came to the realization that he wasn't living out of joy. He didn't have joy and happiness planned in his life. He wasn't aware that he wasn't happy. He was just living without really experiencing joy and happiness or life the way that he wanted it to. I find that fascinating because it is true. We all do that at some point. We get in this stuck space where we are just living and not really living. All of us have a tendency to think that our circumstances rule us, and that's not true. Well, if I didn't have this going on, or if that wasn't going on, or if this hadn't happened, or if this wasn't in my past, or if I had a different personality, if God hadn't built me this way, if I didn't have this body, whatever those excuses are that we have on the inside of us, those are the kind of things that we often want the circumstances to change who we are. In reality, that isn't really how it works. Circumstances are not ever defining who we are. We are defined by how we show up in our circumstances. We are defined by the way that we bring our very core essence and the magic of who we are in the life that we've been presented. And we can create the life that we want. Now, there are circumstances that we can't change, but we can change how we see and how we view and how we approach those circumstances, much like Ed began to say. And he began to now build joy into his life. I heard him say that he is now learning how to ride horses because it's something he enjoys and it's hard for him, something he's never done before. And I love the fact that he is focusing on that and trying to become a person who is very focused on actually having joy. He said this, and we know this is true. Money isn't everything. But if you don't have money, we have a tendency to think that it is. So actually, if you are happy and have joy, it doesn't matter how much you have. Now, there are reasons why we want to be able to be very self-sustaining in what we own. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have, that we need to be poor or rich. But what I'm saying is that money is good for us. But if this is the only thing that you have, there isn't enough joy in the money if you're not joyful already on the inside. And that's the most powerful part that we want to get out of this whole section right here, is because we're thinking about, wow, what is it you've done with your life in this moment? What is it that you're accomplishing, and why don't you have joy? Why don't you have happiness? And what are the things that didn't get you there? Now, I think I said this in some of the posts I had over the past 2 weeks, but I had a heart attack in 2012, and I remember laying on the gurney. I'd gone to the prep room, and I was there for a little while, and here I am on my back, the guy pushing me down the hallway, and this bag over my right hand shoulder, and I'm watching the ceiling tile go by as the doors open up and I head into the operating room, and I had this fleeting moment of, I wonder if this is my last moment. Well, a couple months after that, I began to realize that I really wanted to be a different person. I wasn't happy with myself at all. I was one of the most unhappy people that I knew because I was just hard to be around, hard to live around. And I wanted to change who I was. In 2013, I made that choice. In 2014, I began to really write about some of the things that were true about me in my life, about what I wanted to see different about me. And in that space, I began to be triggered around 2013 about how I was always catastrophizing and awfulizing my world, making things worse than they really were. Like, I had the idea that I could change my life, but I didn't know how. And I wanted to learn how. I recognized that I wasn't able to bring my best person forward because I knew that there was something on the inside of me that was holding me back. It gets harder and harder to push those circumstances away. It gets more difficult to actually make ourselves try to survive in the day when we're focusing on what's happening out here. And so the reason we're talking about self-love today is because what I learned early on is that I had to change the language on the inside of me. You know, when we have lack of purpose, we feel obligated. When we are not living on it with intention, we make poor choices and we're caught up in the circumstances around us and we have a tendency to follow what's happening. If we're not aware, self-aware of who we are and what we're saying to ourselves, then we never become that person that we really could be. Because again, life is about us being able to choose. Do you believe that you choose? I don't believe that we actually have choices that we think we do when we're living in the old patterns. And this is where self-awareness becomes very, very valuable. Now, let's think about who you are and what you're doing right now. What are the circumstances that you'd like to see different and change in your life? What are the things that you are unhappy with? What do you think will make you happy? What do you think will bring you joy? What is it that you really feel that you need or want? What are the yearnings or the type of experiences that you want to have that will bring you happiness? Well, I don't know what they are. But as you're listening to me, I want you to evaluate what they're actually about. Because if you don't like yourself, you can't like anyone else. Did you know that what you think about what's happening around you is a reflection of what you think about yourself on the inside? When someone is critical or judgmental or angry or bitter or holding back their stuff because they just have to, I just can't hardly stand this, that's because they're actually so unhappy on the inside, they project that unhappiness on the outside. Yes, it's true. Who we become is what we learned along the journey. It doesn't matter how we learned it or how we experienced it, but life is really about who you are to yourself on the inside. And that's when I began to make some major choices and major decisions that I wanted to be a different person, that I wanted to not let the old self continue to control me, that I didn't want myself to be the same person I had always been. And here's the fun part. I'm going to teach you how to self-coach. Yes, you can heal yourself. You can coach yourself and become your best person just by following some very simple rules. And we're going to be talking about those here in just a few moments. Now, again, I'm not sure exactly where you're at in your life, but self-love feels kind of weird. And I'm going to talk about scripture for just a second. I'm a believer, and hopefully that you are too. If not, all these principles work regardless. But as a believer, there's a scripture that says that love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul. Okay, we can do that. Love your neighbor as yourself. I'm not so sure I understand that. Yeah, my neighbor was gone for a couple of days and I was feeding her dog and taking the chickens out and picking up their eggs, you know. So I was loving and taking care of my neighbor, right? Because that's actually true. I was doing that. But how do I love myself? Well, what is self-love? Well, do we really know what self-love is? I think the best way to think about self-love, or one of the ways, is look at a child, a little girl, a little boy, and they're 3, 4, and 5 years old. They just love the opportunity to be expressive and say no and want and explore and to run around and enjoy life and play and color and pretend. That's self-love. That's being who I feel like that I want to be, created on the inside of me based on the things that I want to do, right? And then as we get older in a certain space and a certain time, as we go through the development stages of life, we begin to lose that. And it's not like we don't really lose the love for ourselves, but we become judged by those that are around us, and we start listening to their words and what's happening around them and what's happening to them, to us, and what they're doing and what we want and what we can't have, and all these little weird things that we do in our life because we are so focused on the things that are on the outside of us. I hope you hear what I'm saying, that we begin to lose this internal joy when we go through these development stages, and pretty soon as adults we don't really know what self-love anymore. Did you know that your mind is designed to self-evaluate? Did you know that we all talk to ourselves, right? And you do. But when you talk to yourself, you're self-evaluating yourself. And how you self-evaluate yourself, how you evaluate who you are, is based on the things that you've experienced early on in life. In other words, you actually are mirroring the words or the experiences that you had when you were growing up. And if you want to ensure that you're going to have a good day, then we need to be thinking about how to have a good day on the inside. Now, here's what happened to me. Back to my story, I was 2013, struggling, therapist, struggling, not happy, things weren't going well, decided I wanted to change to who I was, got into a program, got some people in my world to kind of help me change, and I started writing. And I wrote an article that's 22 pages long, it's 12,000 words, and I entitled it, The Transparent Heart. And I wrote it from the perspective of knowing that there's things that I really wanted my life to be like. And part of that article was about learning how to self-love. It's the very first part of the Transparent Heart. Transparent Heart means that I'm just open to who I am. And I knew that if I was really not healthy internally, I was never going to be healthy externally. Now, what's even more fascinating to me is that I was just beginning my journey. Now today, it's 10 years later, this is 2024, and I have so much more joy and happiness. I have a healthy way of thinking about the world, and I truly like and love who I am. There's some days I don't like who I am, but I've learned to integrate these 9 things that I wrote. In my innocence, I wrote them. I didn't even know that I was writing and what they were about. I just started writing, and I wrote these 9 principles or things that I love about life, or how I love about how I want to love me. And over the last 10 years, I have kind of unconsciously, but on purpose, integrated them into my life. And I want to share them with you because I think that there are things that you actually can use also to help you think differently about who you are on the inside. So I'm going to share these with you. Now, these foundational truths are pretty important because they are things that we cannot deny. For example, again, let's talk a little bit about the way that I think about the world. I started thinking about how I love my faults. I do. It just proves that I'm imperfect and I can make mistakes. And I was talking about this in 2014, and I also love my body because it's the house that I was given when I came here, and this body is something that I can't change. I can modify its weight and how it looks and things like that, but there's certain things about my body I have to learn to accept. And as I'm thinking about those things and writing them, I begin to recognize that I have to really love the things that I cannot change about me, but then I have to also focus on the things that I can change about me. And I can change the things that I think. The most powerful thing that any of us can ever do is recognize that the words that you think have power, and the things that you experience inside you is what shows up on the outside of you. Let me say that again. The things that you experience on the inside is what actually shows up on the outside. That means that if you have a lot of unforgiveness or anger or bitterness or sorrow or extreme sadness or depression, if you have a lot of those things on the inside of you that you never let go of, like whatever it is that's back in that old history of yours. I heard this wonderful statement the other day while I was listening to a book. She said that we want to hold on to the event for fear that it will never happen to us again, right? So we're hanging on to that event that caused us harm because we don't want it to ever happen again. But that event's continuing to harm us because we're holding on to it, looking for it to happen again. See, what's inside us is what shows up, and we want to be careful about that. So let's start changing our language on the inside of us. There's different ways to self-love, and some of those ways are to physically take care of our bodies and to have good boundaries with people. But here we're talking about the language that we say to ourselves, like what it is that you say to yourself. What are you saying to yourself? Your self-talk. We all have it, right? So let's get into it. This is kind of fun. We are going to go over these rather quickly, and then I'll kind of wrap up some. I want to remind you that these worked for me because this is how I've thought about life, and they may not work for you. But since I have faith, I'm going to start out with one that I believe is important for me in the walk that I'm in. And it simply says this: I think of myself as someone that God loves. Here's what I mean by that. If we can't see ourselves as someone who God loves, then we're not lovable. And so I recognize that I didn't really like myself, and how could God love me because of who I've been and what I've done and where I've gone, or whatever those silly things that I've experienced or done or behaved as, or what I've said, or how I've harmed whatever, and others. I was like, okay, wait a minute. I'm not making an excuse, but I'm simply saying, okay, God, I see myself as lovable. That means that if you love me, I want to do the things that will also make me lovable, right? And so that was the very first place I started. I feel like I am lovable by God. Number 2, I lowered my self-criticism. Now, you know how that is, right? When you do something, the first thing that happens when you do something that's difficult and you don't do it well, or someone cuts you off in traffic, or whatever that stuff is, or you cut someone off in traffic, or the day just started out poorly, it's like you criticize ourselves. And what I decided to do when I wrote this was I was going to lower my self-criticism. And I'm telling you, I don't criticize myself anymore. No, I do not. I don't say demeaning and demanding things to myself about who I am and I shoulda, coulda, woulda, and I don't accumulate things and hold myself accountable for behaviors that aren't mine. I mean, I hold myself accountable for my bad behaviors, but I don't criticize them. I correct them, and I say things like this to myself when I make mistakes or something doesn't go well. I say, wow, I could have done that better. Yeah, I could have done that better. I'll learn how to do that better next time. Or, I don't know what I was thinking, but I know I'm going to be more conscious next time. See how nice I am to myself? I don't criticize. I'm not critical. I'm not condescending. We all make mistakes, and my willingness to be in this non-criticism view truly is what we call self-love. Number 3, I love this one. I practice thinking about being my own best friend. Now, I have some really good friends, and they're not going to be like, I can't believe... They're not my best friend if they were doing that, right? How are you to your best friend? Don't you encourage them and say, come on, Dan, and I see you, and I care about you, and I know this hurts, and yes, those things happen, and it's sad, and these circumstances are not working out for you very well, and yeah, you did have these things happen, and yeah, I see that, but I care about you still. And I want to be there for you. See, when you're your own best friend, you encourage yourself. You spend time acknowledging your pain, but you don't walk away from it. You care for yourself in a way like your own best friend. You talk to yourself in language that is kind and gentle. You're not demeaning or cutting. No, I stopped all of that. I intentionally recorrected my language. I decided not to talk to myself in such a harsh way. I stopped being an unkind man to myself, and I began to be my own best friend. That was number 3. Actually, I want to go back to number 3 for just a moment because I'm reading my notes here. I have some silly best friends. And don't you have someone that you have fun with, That you're kind of silly with them, Not necessarily sarcastic, but just fun, right? You have silly things that you say. Well, that's how I talk to myself. I'm very silly language, like just silly stuff, right? Now, number 4, I refuse to worry. I had a mom that was a worrier. There's lots of worriers in my world. If you're a worrier, hello, why are you worrying, right? Why are we worrying? Why are those things so important that we have to worry about them? I simply decided that I'm going to worry. It's a silly attitude. It creates more headaches. You can't predict the future worrying anyway. Worry is nothing more than wanting to have something happen differently than it's going to happen. You're just thinking about what might happen, and you can't prove it. I think I heard, 95% of what we worry about never happens anyway. So stop predicting the future in a negative way, right? So I chose to not worry. That simply means that I stopped worrying. I chose to not worry. Number 4. Number 5, I celebrate my day. Now, if you're around me personally, I do celebrate my day. I love my days. I have great days and I celebrate them. I celebrate the moments in the day. I celebrate the sunshine, the sunset, the rainy. I celebrate being late. Oh, I'm late. Yay. Okay, I can make this work, right? And it's not like being overly happy and overly joyful about things that aren't going well for me, but it's like celebrating the day in a different way, like recognizing that every day I'm alive and I get to celebrate it and I get to enjoy it. And I recognize how important it is to talk to myself in this celebratory attitude about my successes and where I'm going and how I smile on the inside of me and notice the things that are joyful that I'm experiencing and how much I love them about me. So I celebrate my day. That was number 5. Number 6. More difficult, but something that I do practice consistently, and it's just integrated on the inside of me, and it's just something I've always done since I started this, which I allow myself to have good days and bad days, and I don't fret over my feelings. Let me describe feelings to you. I feel is my past predicting in the current moment the same thing's going to happen. When I feel like it's going to be a bad day, that's because whatever's happening in my current life, my brain's like, okay, this is going to be a bad day, right? Now, maybe we might have some intuition, but if I am worried about my feelings have nothing to do with reality, because feelings are my intellectual attitude toward what's actually happening in my world. My intellectual attitude. That simply means that I'm putting words to what I'm experiencing from my past. So I don't want my feelings to rule. So I don't let my feelings rule. I let the day unroll in the way that unroll in the way that it needs to unroll. So I allow myself to have a bad day. That means that when my day is bad, sometimes it's just bad, and I'll sit in my chair and be sad for a while, or I'll be irritable, or I'll be grumpy, or I'll even allow myself to be angry without harming anyone, without blaming anyone, without trying to change circumstances. But we're going to have bad days. And so I just allow them to show up. I accept them and I move on. And I don't try to push them away. I take care of my mind by being my own best friend and making sure that I'm allowing myself to be who I am showing up in the moment by not harming anyone else or blaming anyone else or trying to change the circumstances when I can't change them, right? I'm changing who I think about myself, or what I think about myself on the inside. That's how I have really focused on allowing myself to be having good days and having bad days. That's number 6. Number 7 is I avoid sarcasm. Very unbecoming. Sarcasm is nothing more than hidden anger, hidden jealousy or bitterness. Sarcasm is spinning the truth in a way that it's funny, but it's hurtful. Someone's getting hurt in sarcasm. Never sarcasm. I never allow it in my practice. That's number 7. Number 8, I allow others to be themselves, even their bad selves. I just allow them to be their bad selves. What? Yes. They are not doing well. It is not my responsibility to fix it. It is also not my responsibility, to worry about it. They're just having a bad day. Right? If they're grumpy and irritable, and if they're mean or grumpy and irritable to me, right? Okay. At some level, I may have a boundary with it, but it's like people just have bad days, Don't you see that guy yelling at his wife because you didn't park the car right the other day? It was like he got out and he's yelling at her, making her park the car a little bit sooner, a little bit closer, wherever, Like, okay, he was having a bad day, right? There's nothing wrong with that because when others are having bad days, we don't know the circumstances that are going on in their world. So just allow it. Radically allow them to have a bad day, right? It doesn't mean that you have to take it personally. Even in the relationships that you're in, whether it would be whatever the relationship is, just allow those things to happen and move past them in a positive way. Allow yourself to make adjustments necessary so you move to a place where you are okay regardless of what's happening around you, because loving yourself means that you don't take it personally because it's not about you. It's just their bad day. We do know we need to have boundaries with those sometimes, but still, allow others to have a bad day, radically. That's number 8. Number 9, the very last one. My favorite one of my favorite ones anyway, which I am totally, absolutely grateful and thankful. Ta-da! When feelings are strong, I remind myself how wonderful life is, that life is a gift, that my mind and my body are gifts, that I own them, and my soul, they are all treasures that I have, and I've been given them for a purpose, and I have great gratitude for who I am. I'm a motivator toward moving towards self-love of myself. I'm thankful for what I have, and I am also grateful for what I have. I'm thankful for what I do not have because of the things that are not in my world also. I'm so thankful that life is treating me the way that it is. And when life is treating me badly, I'm thankful that I have things that I can still lean into, like relationships and whatever those things that are. I'm simply thankful. Now, these are things that I wrote about 10 years ago, and they are fabulously part of how I live my life. The reason that this is important is because you talk to yourself all the time, and the energy inside you is how you show up. We all know that, It's not the words that you say, it's the tone. Yes, it's the energy that comes from the inside of you. Now, I'm not talking about being fake. I'm not talking about pretending to be kind. I'm talking about being gentle with yourself first. Love your neighbor as yourself. And I love that particular scripture because loving yourself means that you are kind and gentle and understand yourself and you self-evaluated. And you've learned how to be aware of what it is that's created this person inside you, and you can move away from that. Education is really important in this process. So I said to you as we started that I was going to give you an assignment, and if you've ever worked with me in my private practice, this is what we do if you chose to be with me. And I'd love to have you as a client if you're interested in that. We'll talk about that in a moment. But here's something I want you to practice. It's called the if-then principle. It simply means that if this happens, I'm actually going to do this next, right? It's the if-then. This is the most powerful way that any self-help book ever helps anyone change, because we recognize that we're going to magically, automatically, because of our automaticity, our brain, we're going to start here, ding, but we're going to move toward here. We're not going to deny that this is true, but we're going to move from here to here. And I like to use the example of buckets. For example, if I have a bucket of negative thinking, oh my goodness, I can't believe how bad the day's turning out, I'm going to move that energy to the bucket I want it to be in, which is like, but I don't have to feel bad about it. I can let go of what's happening. I can find joy in this somewhere, right? So when this happens, instead of going like, I don't want this to happen, I just can't believe it, I'm just going to be happy today. No, that doesn't work, right? The reason that doesn't work is because we're pushing against it. No, you acknowledge that it's true. Yes, when this happens, I do feel bad. I didn't like what happened. I'm going to turn it into, I'm going to be okay with it, right? If I have someone cut me off, I'm not going to call them names and say, I can't believe you did that because I'm late for work. I'm going to be like, why am I doing that? I don't need to be mean to him. I'm responsible for who I am, right? If I'm late for work, it'll always be okay, right? I'm not going to awfulize, catastrophize. I'm not going to actually, worry about it. Things typically work out exactly how they're supposed to because I believe in that. That's why when we have this faith that life is unrolling in front of us the way it's supposed to, we're not pushing this up the hill anymore. We're like, okay, I'm responsible for how I think about me first. I have loved having you with me today so much. It's been the joy of thinking about learning self-love. Starts with how we talk to ourselves. I have a PDF of these. If you'd like them from me, just put a note in the chat box, or you can email me, DM me on Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook. Send me a message there. Easy to find, Daniel C. Clark. Or you can actually contact me. I have a schedule. If you want to spend time with me, if you want to have a half-hour conversation about your life and how I might be able to help you with whatever you're going through, the best way to get a hold of me is go to danielcclark.me. That's .me. Daniel C. There's two C's there. danielcclark.me, and that'll call up my schedule. And there we are. And I would love to spend time talking with you and sharing with you some things that maybe could help you at a deeper level. I mean, I would love to be able to help you with that. Every one of us has to, I have a coach, every one of us have to have someone help us get through life because we can't see ourselves accurately. And I'm hoping that you've enjoyed today and that you've learned some things and that you take these principles. Like I said, if you want them, DM me, I'll get them to you. If you registered for this class, this webinar, you'll automatically get them from me, get them to you later today, and you can read them yourselves. There's a little bit of Christian language in them. I didn't change it a whole lot because I wrote it as I was just maturing in my walk with myself. So there's some funny language in there. I had to correct some of the spelling and stuff, but I'm gonna leave it like it is because I love the originality of it because that's who I am, right? And again, thank you so much for being here with me. My name is Dan Clark again, and it's danielcclark.me, or it's transformlife.net would be the other place to get a hold of me, or on Facebook, or LinkedIn, or Instagram. And as I always say, from the depth of my heart, I truly, truly love you, and I just hope the best for you, and I hope that you truly, truly learn how to love yourself.